a young man. He's 18 years old. His name's Michael Gatto. He was beaten to death by a bouncer in Statesboro, Georgia. He was a freshman this summer. He was beaten to death by a bouncer. And the investigations led to all kinds of things. Give you a couple of brief points. The bar that he was beaten to death in had 71 citations in a 3-year period of time, but yet not one single administrative hearing by the city council. Not one. This law is to create accountability. That's really what it's about. My hope is that this committee helps me make this bill a better bill, one that does not have unintended consequences, and I'll look for input from as many members as I can. With that, I'd like to outline the 3 things this does, and then we'll go through the bill. First, help cities and counties follow the letter of the law that's been on the books for over 30 years. Secondly, it creates a higher level of accountability for the entities or the establishments that hold an alcohol license that break the law. And lastly, we look to raise the age of a bouncer from 18 to 21. Some folks in the industry have reached out that had concerns about the bill, and we've looked at opportunities to address those. Representative Harrell has helped me look into some areas of unintended consequences. One of the things we've done is limit this bill to the actions that occur on premise. Right? We don't want to catch somebody, an employee that happens to make a mistake outside of the establishment that's not really related to the alcohol license that's there. The other misconception that's happened is some cities and counties have felt like this is an opportunity. You'll probably hear them speak to this in a little bit. That this potentially has a problem with if the sheriff hands out a citation and doesn't properly communicate that to the city council or to the county commissioners, that they would be at fault. Well, currently they are at fault because the law's been on the books for 30 years. But really, this bill doesn't put any penalty behind that error in non-reporting. What it does is we ask cities and counties to get into the room and to create an ordinance. Shall by resolution or ordinance adopt a policy and implement a process. Is all we ask for them to do is put in writing what's been in place for 30 years so that they better understand what the law is and what the process is and how they can better communicate that to the Department of Revenue. In meeting with the Department of Revenue, I asked them a couple of questions the first time, and I said, how many liquor licenses do you guys revoke or have you revoked? And they didn't give me an exact number, but the number was very, very few. And so I kept probing with questions, and I said, tell me why it's a few. Did we just not have that many bad actors in Georgia? And really what their comments to me were they don't have a very good visibility down to the local level. The law and the system is set up in such a way that those locals are supposed to communicate that to the Department of Revenue. They're able to identify the bad actors, and then they're able to go in and send their enforcement team in and take the appropriate action. Last but not least, I want to talk about the age of a bouncer. Some folks have asked, is a 21-year-old a better decision maker than an 18-year-old? And the answer is I don't know. I really, truly don't. I can't sit here and tell you that a 21-year-old is a better decision maker. But what I do is I present a problem, a real-life problem that we're trying to solve with this. The problem is, in a lot of these college towns, you have less than 21-year-olds, 18, 19-year-old college students that are working the front gates. And their sphere of influence, their friends, are typically underclassmen. They're 18, 19-year-olds. And so the peer pressure builds. That person walks by. They put a band on them. That's typically the way these bars work, is they put a band on them, and the rest of the night they drink. We've put an 18 and 19-year-old or 20-year-old into a tough position. Can a 21-year-old make that same mistake? Absolutely. But we feel like it increases the odds that that's not going to happen as often. We have put a few provisions in. One is for anybody that's in active military. And that's, somebody had brought to me that they didn't think that it was a good idea to make a bouncer 21 instead of 18 because we send off our brave men and women to fight for our country. And the answer is yes, we do, but we also spend tens of thousands of dollars training those individuals as to how to properly handle conflict. And last but not least, we put a stadium provision in because we don't want to catch ticket takers at sporting events and ushers of those sorts. In closing, understand that there's work to do on the bill. Look forward to this committee's input. Look forward to the experience that many of the folks on this committee have. And I would entertain any questions. I have a few folks here that I'd like to call forward to speak whenever the committee's done.
Roger. I've got the first question. You said active military. extend that to reservists.
Active duty members of the regular and reserve component of the United States Armed Forces is already included.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Okay, we've got a list of people to speak here. I'm going to Representative Duncan. Do you have a group of people that you have here to speak?
I'd like to recognize Mr. Gatto, Michael Gatto.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. Either at the table or at the podium, whichever you're more comfortable with. Mr. Gatto.
I'd like to thank the committee and Chairman Taylor for allowing me to speak and to be heard. I'd also like to thank Representative Duncan and Mike Dudgeons for their efforts so far. The amount of time and the effort that has been put into HB 152 is greatly appreciated, and without their support, we would not have gotten this far. 3 days ago, my son, Michael Joseph Gatto, would have turned 19. He never made it, as he was murdered by an underage off-duty bouncer that was overserved by an underage and untrained bartender at Rude Rudy's in Statesboro. This was on August 28th, just about 6 months ago. The ordinances of the city of Statesboro allowed 18-year-olds to enter this restaurant, which was clearly a bar. Ordinances that abolished the city's Alcohol Standards Board. Ordinances that allowed cover charges and pretzels to count as food. Ordinances that allowed unaudited receipts to verify the 50% rule that establishes whether or not it's a restaurant or a bar. Ordinances that didn't even require a kitchen to classify it as a restaurant. Ordinances that allowed a restaurant to open at 9 o'clock at night. Does it sound like a restaurant to you? It was a bar. This restaurant alone had 102 ambulance visits in a 2-year period. That's almost one per week. How many restaurants can you say have an ambulance show up once a week? As Representative Duncan mentioned, there are over 40 violations in 1 year and over 71 over 3 years, in which not one of those violations were ever taken before the City Council for administrative action. Not one. Between 2011 and 2014, not one administrative action had actually been taken in the city of Statesboro. Even though, as Representative Duncan said, this has been a requirement and on the books for over 30 years. The DOR states that its hands are tied when they do not get information from the local level. They simply can't do anything. As mentioned, only 3 counties regularly report to the DOR. This, in and of itself, should have been a red flag for the DOR, prompting an investigation as to why no other counties or municipalities were reporting. Did they honestly think that everyone was doing the right thing in Statesboro, in Milledgeville, in Carrollton, in Valdosta, Athens, all of these college towns, not one violation is being reported and coming into the DOR, and no red flags are sent up? No one wonders what's really happening there? I found it telling that someone with the GMA actually hunted down Jeff Duncan to discuss HB 152 and the possible adding of reporting to the bill as part of this legislation. And obviously the response was that this has been required for 30 years. Part of the problem is lack of education, when someone from the GMA doesn't even know that that's required. The DOR stated that Michael would be alive today if the reporting had been done, as the bar would have been closed down under the current law. With no reporting being done, license renewals are blindly rubber stamped, and it is business as usual, over-serving patrons and serving to minors. There's no accountability on the local level or for the license holders. HB 152 will change that. The state and local level failed our son. The city of Statesboro is a perfect illustration of the fox guarding the henhouse. The problem is, with only 3 counties regularly reporting, almost the entire state at the local level is failing to uphold the law and protect its citizens. Under the current system, the state cannot do anything about it. HB 152 will change that. Georgia's pro-business. I get that. I'm a small business owner. And I'm obviously pro-business. The main difference is I'm not pro-business at the expense of human life. My employees, my customers, they're always protected because I train my employees and I insure my company. It's a business model that all businesses should be required to follow. Laws, regulations, policies, whatever you want to call them, they're all put into place because of the minority to protect the majority. That's the bottom line. That's why we have laws. If everyone always did the right thing, we would not need them. But reality says that we do. These same laws help to prevent violations because people understand there will be consequences to their actions. In the bar and restaurant business, currently there are little to no consequences. HB 152 helps to create accountability. One thing I want you to all keep in mind is this is not just about underage drinking. Any one of you could leave here today and be affected the rest of your life by the very same industry that you're here to protect. This not only affects every person that enters into a bar or a restaurant that serves alcohol, but it affects everyone. Whether you're driving, whether you're walking along the side of the road, or whether you're having a coffee at a roadside cafe. You never think it's going to happen to you or a loved one. And in an instant, and without warning, it can happen. And tomorrow you could be me. You might hear some people speak against HB 152. And in my opinion, it'll be clearly out of fear and ignorance. Anyone who chooses to vote against HB 152 is saying that my son's death is just a part of doing business here in Georgia. And that serving the next patron is more important than protecting the very people that provide a living for these owners. Is that the kind of pro-business you want Georgia known for? Our son's death was 100% preventable. HB 152 is the first step in helping to prevent another tragedy like this. By supporting HB 152, you have the ability to correct the colossal failure of our current system and make a statement that not only my son's life mattered, but that all of the people of Georgia matter and their safety comes before business. My wife and I are committed to seeing this through to the end, no matter how long it takes and how many committees we have to speak at. I have provided a handout, which I'd like to make sure that everyone in the committee and anyone else that wants to have it, regarding also making HB 152 broader in scope, related to training. It is not currently part of the bill. Raising the bouncer age to 21 and developing a reporting system that creates accountability is a great first step. The bill is coming along. Adding trainers for bouncers, servers, bartenders, license holders, and managers will actually prevent, and that's the key, it will prevent these violations and events from actually occurring in the first place. And that's really what we want. The handout that I have has all the facts and statistics that prove that training works. Let's be proactive and join the nearly 60% of the country that already requires training in this industry. This is your opportunity to show both the businesses and citizens of Georgia that you can create a policy that allows both to prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. If you want to take questions, your
happy
call,
to
sir.
take questions.
Any questions from the committee? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Representative Hill. Representative Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author and the family, I think it's a sense of the entire committee that we share a desire to address the issue that was a tragedy that has affected your family's life. And we agree, and you identified a number of issues that are present in the bill and a number that may not be. For example, why hasn't DOR reported with only 30 years of regulations and only 3 reporting? And we didn't need a bill to clarify something maybe amiss there. So I think this is an issue that definitely needs attention, and as each of you have stated too, we want to make sure that we don't have any unintended consequences, and there may be a few areas there that we need to look at. So with that, I'd like to, if it's the will of the committee, move that we take this measure, House Bill 152, into our Alcohol and Tobacco Subcommittee, set up an additional committee meeting and working group to address the issues that the author and the family have brought to our attention today. We've heard from a number of others in the industry as well, and some of those may be valid, others are not. But to bring this issue to some clarity and make sure whatever our regulations are going to be, that they're followed. So
we've got a motion to move that to the Alcohol and Tobacco Subcommittee. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The bill is now moved from the whole committee to the Chairman Powell's Alcohol and Tobacco Subcommittee. Chairman Powell, do you have any idea when you're going to be holding a hearing on that possibly? Roger that. So Chairman Powell's office will promulgate when that next meeting will be, but that bill is now moved to the Alcohol and Tobacco Subcommittee of Regulated Industries. Do I have who's 25? Okay. All right. Do we have it in our folder? Chairman Roberts, give me 1 second to pull that bill up. Give me just 1 second, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Does everybody have 110 in front of them? We haven't started the hearing yet.
Hey.
Okay, does everybody have HB 110 in front of them? It should be in your folders. Okay. We are going to revisit HB 110. Mr. Chairman, I think we're working off LC 410423S. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Present your bill.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring to you today House Bill 110, and he gave you the correct LC number 423S. This bill seeks to actually, in the state of Georgia, as most of you know, we are not allowed to have full-line fireworks sale here in the state of Georgia. Our other states surrounding us allows it. We have people that are constantly buying from the other states. We feel like that, or I feel like that it is time that we allow this full-line sale of fireworks here in the state of Georgia. So what this bill seeks to do is to allow for that to take place. If you look at the bill, and I'll just kind of go down through it as quickly as possible, Section 1 actually gives us the definition of the word consumer fireworks. And I think if you'll see that definition, we'll get down to where it says NFP 1124 to 2006 edition. That is used because it's the only document that addresses every aspect of the retail, sale, storage, and display of consumer fireworks and sparkling devices. The later edition of that actually removes all of the sprinkler requirements and related design criteria for fireworks stores and fireworks storage buildings. So we actually use that edition, the 2006 edition, for that specific reason. The definition does not include model rockets and model rocket engines designed for propelling recoverable aerial models, toy pistol paper caps, ammunition used for sporting and hunting purposes, wood or wire sparklers, and other sparkling items which are non-explosive, non-aerial, and contain 75 grams or less of a chemical compound per tube, or a total of 500 grams or less for multiple tubes and smoke devices. This definition is currently legal with sparkling devices. It is updated to maintain the consistency within our current industry standards. We move over to Section 2. We get to where we define lawful conduct within here. We talk about all the current age limits for 18 for purchases and are maintained for all fireworks, and no sales allowed for anyone other than face-to-face purposes, and otherwise we're not allowing for internet sales with this. It's got to be a face-to-face transaction with it. The sellers of the consumer fireworks must obtain a license from the Safety Fire Commissioner, and you see that on lines 87 through 90. We also deal with retail sale of consumer fireworks that can be made from a permanent retail sales facility, stores, and temporary retail stands, and you can look at those or in lines 96 through 106. And a permanent retail sales facility is a permanent building or structure that is used primarily for the retail display and sale of consumer fireworks to the public. I mean, we know what that is. I mean, when we travel outside the state of Georgia, once you get to Alabama or a few of our other states, you start to see that. A store is a building that's classified as a mercantile occupancy that contains a variety of merchandise. In other words, these are like Walmart, Publix, those types of places. And then a temporary retail stand is a temporary or permanent building or structure that has a floor area not greater than 800 square foot, other than tents, canopies, and membrane structures. That is usually primary for the retail display and sale for consumer fireworks. Those are for our 501c3 groups that are out there selling these. Most of the time they're set up within the parking lots of the Walmarts or Publix or whatever. But no sale of consumer fireworks from tents, canopies, membrane structures, or in a motor vehicle from a trailer towed by a motor vehicle. And you can see that on lines 101 through 102. And that keeps somebody from being able to just pull up that's not actually that they haven't received a license and just goes in and sets up real quick in order to be able to sell them. Section 3 deals with our licensing provisions, and it says the Safety Fire Commissioner cannot issue a license to anyone convicted of a felony pertaining to fireworks within 5 years preceding the date of his or her application, and those are in lines 113 through 115 that I think is an important. Licensee must obtain a public liability and product liability insurance with a minimum coverage limits of $2 million. It's in 116 through 118. You'll see that. And then for permanent facilities, you see that we have in there in lines 119 through 132, where we have in there the fee of $5,000 per year in location payable to the Fire Safety Commissioner. After the initial fee, the renewable fee is $1,000 per year. For temporary stands, on lines 133 through 136, we deal with an annual licensee fee for a nonprofit group is $200 per location and is good for 90 days. We originally looked at 180 days for that, but we felt like we needed to bring it back to 90 days. 180 days just gives, in our opinion, too long for a stand, a temporary stand, to be able to set up with that. So we removed that back to 90 days. For stores, all of our annual license fee is $100 per year and per location. Section 4 is the enforcement of it, and says that our state fire marshal shall be responsible for the enforcement. Section 5 deals with the penalties and all and fines for illegal sales, and increases those from $100 to $2,500. In other words, we want to make sure that they comply with the law and don't go out there, and that's why we've increased that fine to $2,500. Section 6 deals with making sure that we don't allow the lanterns that you see that some may put out on the water or whatever at a function, so a wedding or whatever, and also the aerial devices that may be let go that floats throughout the wind and they can be taken off for a long distance. We wanted to make sure that those were explicitly exempted from this piece of legislation. Section 7 deals with the excise tax, 5% excise tax on our retail sales of consumer fireworks and sparkling devices, which will apply to all retailers of these devices, and that's seen on line 190. Fireworks retailers that fail to collect and pay that should be guilty of a misdemeanor and pay up to a fine of $10,000. You know, we've talked about in the past about that, what do we do with that excise tax? As most of you know, we can't put it in this legislation. That would be a CA as to the dedication of it. There's been a lot of talk about what we would do with that, but that will be left up to the purview of us as a General Assembly as to where we might want to dedicate it to. So, Mr. Chairman, I know that was quick, but that's about as quick as I can go through it and go over the bill with you, and be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Maxwell.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. I want to make sure I'm clear on this with the nonprofits. In line 101, we say that we can't sell, it's unlawful to sell consumer fireworks from tents and canopies or membrane structures. But now the nonprofits, from what I understand, set up tents in front of Walmarts or Sam's or these different places. And is that specifically allowed in 7 where it says the nonprofits are allowed to do that? Can they do the tents and canopies or whatever?
And on line what? I'm sorry.
Line 101, it shall be unlawful to sell consumer fireworks from any tents or canopies.
Yes, sir.
But then
yes,
on 103 to 106, you're talking about the nonprofits. Are they going to be allowed to sell from tents? Because that's what I understand most of these people do. They'll go in and set up a tent in front of some of these places.
That is my understanding, that we still keep it from unlawful. However, I will be glad to accept an amendment. They wanted to look at stands because that's easier for us to police and look at from the standpoint of what the safety issues of it. That was one of the things that was brought in there. But if somebody wanted to offer an amendment, I would be okay with that.
I think I've had several calls from different nonprofits that do this in front of some of the bigger stores, and they want to be able to continue that nonprofit. So I would like to offer that in a amendment.
Yeah, and we're not trying to prevent any of those nonprofits from coming in and setting up within those Walmarts, Publix, whatever it may be. The bottom line is, we don't probably your Walmarts, your Publix, and all that are not going to carry your full line fireworks. They're going to probably stick with what they have today from the sparkler standpoint, and but we don't have a problem with that. We're okay.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, 18 is Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative. I have a question on line 91, that provision that makes it lawful for any person who is 16 or 17 years of age to sell or offer the fireworks as long as they are serving as an assistant. Does the primary person have to be on the premises along with the underage assistant at the time that the sale is being done?
It's not my understanding that that person has to be on the premises at the time. It's just like, I guess, like we do with grocery stores with beer or wine. Sometimes they're not 21 or whatever, but they're able to be there as a cashier to cash out. But it would basically go back to the same kind of understanding. You got to make sure that your management is making sure that these individuals are applying or abiding by the law. So I don't believe that this language would require the manager or whatever that's 18 to be there on the premises at the time. I'd have to go back and make sure, but I don't think that it does.
May I ask a
Absolutely.
Okay, just one follow-up question, and then would the underage person have to be identified? Is there a certification or some type of legal identification that would identify that this person is working under the is approved to work under this person? I guess I'm concerned about underage people being present to sell fireworks without any type of...
No, to answer your question, I do not believe that this does. I mean, they are working for an employer that is 18 years or older, but as far as them being identified, this does not require that. No, ma'am.
There's no licensure or anything like that?
No.
Not at all. Representative Martin.
Chairman Roberts.
Sure.
I have a question. On 7, and I'm trying to get to the nonprofits and the sale of that. We've sort of upgraded what we're going to allow to sell in Georgia if this bill passes, have we not?
Yes, sir.
So, is there a situation now, and I'm going to self-admit here, I'm not a fireworks expert or purchasing or using. Do nonprofits can sell things in Georgia that are legal to be sold in Georgia now in these temporary stands?
Correct.
Okay, here's my pause. We've upgraded significantly what we're going to allow sold. It seems that, and again, I don't get crossways with Chairman Maxwell here on his wishes and mine, but I have pause at allowing these temporary stands to sell everything. I'm concerned at how we make sure they know on a temporary basis and have the expertise from everything from storage to theft and so forth. So I don't want to take anything away from what they're doing now, but I have, and what I thought I heard you say is you would be amenable to entertaining an amendment to the expansion, I guess, of their thing, but you had pause about taking anything away from them. Is that, if we could find a fair place in the middle, is that something that would be agreeable to the author?
Sure, and this bill doesn't prohibit them from doing anything they currently can do. This is just for the expansion of full line, consumer fireworks, what I would call full line fireworks.
Okay.
More questions from the committee? Anderson. Sorry. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I have one question, and
sure.
Back to the nonprofit. I'm trying to get an idea of nonprofits that may sell fireworks, like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts.
501, legitimate 501c3. Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, your
Band booster clubs.
anybody that has that status would could get a license underneath there to be able to sell it. I mean that there's a number of groups out there currently today that actually sell these within their tents. Not this line, but the sparklers and all that we currently have here in the state of Georgia. A lot of nonprofits actually use this as a fundraiser for them around the 4th of July and around the first of the year, but mainly around the 4th of July. They use this. Habitat for Humanity is one. I know that they use this as well. So those are types of organizations that currently use this in order to fundraise.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, we're about to get run out of this room, Chairman Roberts.
Yes.
So,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Can we come back Thursday at 1 o'clock and very quickly get through the rest of this? Because I know we've got a couple of amendments and all, but I don't think we're going to have time to get those done before we get.
Our room is, we've been out of time 10 minutes ago. People waiting in the hall to get this room, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Thursday at 1 would be fine. I've got my full committee meeting at 2, so 1 o'clock would be fine.
This and one other bill will be it, but you'd be up first, sir. So at 1 o'clock Thursday.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
We got people waiting out in the hall, sir.
Sure.
So
Thank you.
with that, we're going to adjourn the meeting right now and come back Thursday at 1.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee members, if you would, just please, you've got the sub to 276 and 2 proposed amendments in your packet. Please take those with you. And between now and Thursday, if you have any questions, please get with me so we'll be prepared to go quickly on Thursday. Thank you.
Thursday we will hear 110 and Representative Harrell's bill on the big alcohol code revision. We'll try to do it at 1 o'clock and have y'all out here to get home. Okay? Thursday at 1.